Welcome, everybody, to your Week 13 Fantasy Football in Review for Mills and Friends League 2024. I'm your commissioner, Scott Mills, and I'm going to go through the Week 13 recap, our last recap before the playoffs start, kind of. Well, yeah, next week is going to be the recap of the entire season because there's only 1 week left in the regular season. And we have 7 teams that can make it and 5 that have been officially eliminated. Let's get through the scores from week 13 and how we got here. So we have up first, congratulations to Phoebe's Warriors for the high score for the week, putting up 145.9 on the Seeking Forgiveness team, which does knock the Seeking Forgiveness team out of playoff contention. 6 wins cannot do it, cannot get you into the top 6 seeds. So better luck next year for the Seeking Forgiveness team. And Phoebe's Warriors maintains that 2 seed spot and gains a big, locks it up with Team Emmy losing and going to 8-5. Now is in the 2 seed solidified. Cannot get the 1 seed. That is just not realistically possible to outscore Spooky Season by 260 points in the final week. But yes, the 2 seed still gets that first round bye, so that was a huge win there. But as you can see, like Emmy's team, they've got the 3 seed, but I would say that Emmy's team could drop to the 4 seed if Return of the King has a big scoring week and outscores Emmy's team by at least 20 points, then they would take the 3 seed. I think it would be pretty tough for Emmy's team to fall down to the 5 seed, even if they lose. They'd have to have a really bad week, and then Lamb Chub's Play Along would have to have a really good week in order for that to happen. But as you can see, though, here, teams 4 through 7 all have the same record. None of them are playing each other in week 14. And so it's very possible that we could have all 4 of these teams win and get to 8-6, and then one of them is out, and that would be me. Because, again, just like it's not realistic to be able to outscore by 260 points, it's also not realistic to even outscore somebody by 110 points, which is what I would need to do, with Egg Ball Elite being the next closest in total points scored. So the only chance for my team, Walker Up Win, to advance would be if one of these other 3 teams were to lose and I win, then I would be in the playoffs. Other than that, as I was saying, the 8 through 12 seeds are all eliminated from the playoffs. They cannot get in, no matter how big they happen to win by in the last week. Both Wolves Warriors and Seeking Forgiveness lost last week, which is what knocked them down. So we saw Phoebe's Warriors team with that high score for the week getting the win, with Tua Tagovailoa now having another really nice fantasy week. So holding on to him all this time is now paying off with some better scores from the team. Aaron Jones struggled in this game, but you're hoping that was just kind of an outlier and that he'll bounce back in the next game. For Tampa Bay, this Bucky Irving really had a really big game. So that was nice to see, especially since he's also got Mike Evans for Tampa Bay also having a nice game. So the Tampa Bay fantasy players doing very well for Phoebe's Warriors. And Mark Andrews with a nice game, and T. Higgins with a nice game. So yeah, just all around pretty nice from this team. Deebo Samuel's been kind of a disappointment this year. Certainly, the second half of the year, Deebo Samuel has not been very good, and the 49ers just in general haven't been very good. So it's going to have to figure out something there in that second flex spot for sure. Pittsburgh's defense was looking really good as well. And the Chargers' defense, for seeking forgiveness, was one of the bright spots there, and the kicker with 15 as well, with Pittsburgh's kicker. But just not enough other stuff going on with the players. 129, not a bad score. You just happen to be going against the highest scoring player for the week. Uh, so that's what happened there. Okay, so we'll go to the second highest score for the week. I was 1 point behind Phoebe's Warriors, 144.46 to 115, knocking Wolf's Warriors out of playoff contention as well. So let's take a look and see what happened here. Russell Wilson with a very nice game over here, actually outdoing Lamar Jackson fantasy-wise, which is kind of a surprise. Running back-wise, not very good. At the wide receiver spot, definitely okay performances there. A.J. Brown, not great. Calvin Ridley, who I actually traded to Wolves Warriors there, really not doing well this week. That's been kind of his MO. He's the up and down guy. Jonnu Smith had another nice game, and Jonnu Smith is actually up to the number 4 tight end, scoring tight end in fantasy right now. And Brock Bowers for the Wolves Warriors team is the number 1 scoring tight end, interestingly. He's been very good for Wolves Warriors this year, but not enough to get him into the playoffs. So, and then over here, just some nice, decent scores here going down. So, Dallas's defense was a nice pickup there, but I'm going to go ahead and move on so I don't get yelled at for talking about my team too much. Because I was definitely happy I won. But again, like I was saying, I can easily win next week and not get into the playoffs if all of the other 7 and 6 teams also win, which is a possibility because they are none of them are playing each other. So that's a little unfortunate for me if it happens that my team's finally hitting their stride, they're healthy, putting up big scores now, and then I don't get into the playoffs. But that's how it goes sometimes. Okay, so next one, we had Lamb Chub's Play Along, another team now at 7 and 6, winning 138.9 against Team Ludina, putting up 101. Team Ludina had already been eliminated from the playoffs, and Lamb Chub's Play Along stays alive, and they can get into the playoffs if they win, because of their points scored is high enough that if they just win, they will be in the playoffs. So let's see over here. Baker Mayfield, not great fantasy-wise. But Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor were good. And we had CeeDee Lamb not doing well without Dak Prescott. Not doing well at all. Let's see here. Still the number 5 fantasy wide receiver. But as we can kind of see, he had a 5 in week 10 and now a 4.9 in week 13. He still had some okay there, 14, 11, 12s. So definitely CeeDee Lamb I don't think has been quite as productive without Dak Prescott, which makes sense. And we had Terry McLaurin over here, had a big game. Jerry Jeudy for the Browns with 36 points. That definitely, Monday night, very much solidified the victory for Lamb Chub Play Along. And again, Nick Chubb, not very efficient, but he did run for a touchdown in this game. So he did get a decent fantasy score that way. Over here for the Team Ludina, you had A-Chain, which is probably your best fantasy player this year, with the 17. Some decent scores over here, but then, you get to Jameson Williams not doing a ton. Romo Dunes didn't really break out the way you're hoping when he was drafted earlier. Tyjae Spears isn't really going to do much, and yeah, so it was just a tough year all around for the Team Ludina. All right, on to our next matchup that we're going to talk about. Another of the 7-6 teams now, with Return of the King putting up a big 133.52. So definitely a lot of nice scores from these teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Potentially. Return of the King, another one of those. He wins, he's in the playoffs. If he loses, it's possible that he could still get in, but not as likely. So we had over Team Mills Cards, who was also already eliminated. So you had Jalen Hurts putting up average game. Alvin Kamara putting up a nice game on the ground, just no touchdown. Bijan Robinson, nice game. Malik Neighbors, solid. Jackson Smith-Jigba had an okay game. Yeah, so everybody had a pretty decent game here for no huge scores outside of Bijan Robinson with the over 20 points. But 130 is going to win you a lot of games. So 133 is going to win you a lot of games. And over here for the Mills Cards team, Patrick Mahomes just continued to not be that great fantasy-wise, especially not for where you drafted him at the start of the year. So that was definitely disappointing this year for you. Josh Jacobs probably ended up being the best fantasy player for him. And Tyreek Hill starting to wake up, but too little too late for Tyreek Hill being good. The damage has already been done in the loss column there. And so Chuba Hubbard, really bad game here with only 1 point from Carolina. Chuba Hubbard's been pretty good, but not this week. And that's about all I've got to say about that. So we'll head over to the Egg Ball Elite, another of the 7-6 teams now, winning 129 to 113. Emmy's team not quite the 200 points, because that's only if you're playing against Team Mills Cards that you can get 200 points. And a big loss for Team Emmy because now she can only at best get the 3 seed and cannot get a first round bye. But almost definitely locked in to being in the playoffs because the points scored is enough that even if she were to lose, there's no way that 4 other teams would pass her in the standings. So, Egg Ball Elite over here, Josh Allen had a really nice game in snowy weather. So, definitely, I would say a little unexpected that his fantasy performance was that good, but Josh Allen always has the capability of being really good. Jaden Daniels actually was pretty much just about matched the score from Josh Allen there fantasy-wise. Jaden Daniels was very good. But Jahmyr Gibbs had an off night over here. Saquon, his usual good self, had a nice game again. Keenan Allen had a really nice game over here for Egg Ball Elite. Definitely helping him get the win there. And Nick Westbrook Akine with the start, and correctly starting him. Getting those 2 touchdowns really helped with this score, getting him up to having a big game. And over here, the kicker was very nice for the Chargers as well. So definitely, Eggball Elite looking poised to make the playoffs with just one more win. Again, winning pretty much ensures Eggball Elite will be in the playoffs because I'm the only other team that can, again, as we went over earlier, that could potentially move into the top 6. But I would need one of the 7 and 6 teams to lose because I cannot outscore any of them enough to take that playoff spot. So let's take a look at our next matchup. We're going to look at Spooky Season, locking up the number 1 seed with this win with 120 points to 97 from Noma Cafatak. Noma Cafatak had been eliminated from the playoffs last week. So nothing to play for here. The scores were not good from Noma Cafatak. And Spooky Season continuing the excellent season, going to 11-2. Derrick Henry, not the huge game that he normally has, but still a nice game. Chase Brown had a very nice game for Cincinnati. Kyler Murray had a nice average game. Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit down. Not quite getting to that double digit, but he didn't need him to in this one. DJ Moore with a nice big game for the Bears. One of the few bright spots for the Bears after their game which got their coach fired, which was very bad. I don't know if any of you saw the highlights of the end of that game. Definitely not handled correctly. And then I think the nail in the coffin was the Bears head coach coming on after the game saying, "Yeah, I thought we handled that correctly." And everybody knows that he didn't actually handle it correctly. And then he gets fired. So, too bad for the Bears coach that he got fired, but that's what happens in the NFL when you make big mistakes. Okay, moving on, we're going to see Houston's kicker had a nice game there with 13. Drake London, a nice 12.8. So just some nice performances out of the Spooky Season players there to get the win. And that will be that. And we'll move on to, I believe, our last, or that might have been it. Was that it? Yeah, Spooky Season was the lowest scoring winner, so definitely some higher scores this week. All the games were kind of blowouts, really. There wasn't any of the matchups that were within 10 points scored. So yeah, not too much exciting this week. But next week, definitely going to be exciting. So let's just take a look at these matchups so I can show you what I was talking about a little bit. So I'm taking on the 2-seed Phoebe's Warriors. Phoebe's Warriors has locked up the 2-seed, cannot move into the 1-seed. So we'll see what happens here. The result of this game does not matter as much for Phoebe's Warriors as it does for Walker Up Win. So no matter what, it is a must-win for me to be able to get into the playoffs. But I also would need another team to lose in order for me to get into the playoffs. So I'm in the situation of have to win and need another team to lose. So unfortunately for both Wolves Warriors and Seeking Forgiveness, because they both lost last week, this matchup has no bearings on playoffs at all. So the season is over for both of your teams. And there's no playing spoiler or anything. So Wolves Warriors will no longer be playing to defend their co-championship, I call it. They have the gold ribbon, but they did split the winnings last year, so just thought that needed to be said. Okay, and then so we'll move on to the next matchup here, and Eggball Elite with the 7-6. This is a big one for him. Eggball Elite is in a win and move on to the playoffs. And then Team Mills Cards, the season is over, but they could play spoiler potentially. And right now the projections are very low on both teams. Eggball Elite maybe has some players on bye. Yeah, Zay Flowers on bye. Ramondre Stevenson on bye. So he's going to have to figure out what to do there. Got also Team Mills Cards with Hunter Henry on bye and Washington's defense on bye, as well as a few more players on the bench. So that should be interesting to see what happens here with that. Over here we have Return of the King going up against Team Emmy. Team Emmy is almost assuredly locked into the 3 seed, but Return of the King is in 4th place and is 20. Yeah, if they outscore Emmy's team by 20 points in this matchup, Return of the King would move into the 3 seed, Team Emmy would drop to the 4 seed, and it would only affect what matchup you have in the first round of the playoffs. Playoffs for Team Emmy is guaranteed, even in a loss. Return of the King needs to win to ensure playoffs. But even with the loss, Return of the King could still possibly get into the playoffs if another team loses that's 7-6 as well. So definitely a big matchup to watch here. Because 3 seed ends up playing 6 seed in the first round, and then 4 seed would play 5 seed, is how that ends up working. So then we've got Spooky Season playing Team Ludina. This matchup won't matter, at least for this week. There's no playing spoiler. Spooky Season is locked up the 1 seed no matter what happens here. And then in the last matchup, you got Lamb Chub's Play Along needing the win versus No McCaff Attack. No McCaff Attack season is over, but they could play spoiler against Lamb Chub's Play Along. Lamb Chub's Play Along also with a very low projected score and has a few players on bye. Both starting running backs on bye for Lamb Chub's Play Along. That's going to make this one kind of tricky. And Terry McLaurin. So yeah, definitely 3 players on bye for Lamb Chub Play Along. It's going to make things difficult. And then Baltimore's defense on bye as well, but Tampa Bay's defense has been decent, so you might just continue rolling with them against Las Vegas. And over here you had Justin Tucker on bye for No McCaff Attack. And Devontae Smith. We'll see if he comes back to play here for this game. And Christian McCaffrey, again, seems like he's done for the season. Never really helped the fantasy managers who drafted him number 1. So, yes, no McCaff Attack for the entire season. And that led to a dud of a fantasy football season for them. So that's it for my Week 13 recap. And next week, we're going to be going over the playoff matchups. So that is going to be very exciting. And so congratulations to whoever makes it in to the playoffs. And it's been a fun season. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off and watch the remainder of